In fact, throughout history, references to aliens, gods, or other beings having come from the stars are quite common. Many researchers today are beginning to piece together a theory that we ourselves may be the product of alien intervention. Humans could be a hybrid created by the extraterrestrials and left here on Earth to be monitored in some long-term experiment.
But there are species that...
I believe that the government knows so much more about this phenomena than they're letting on, that even finding out the tip of the iceberg of what they know is going to put people in shock. But as I'm actively involved in the local MUFON chapter in Michigan, we get currently about 200 sightings a year just in Michigan. And that is enough to fill your plate several times over with UFO cases. So to me, it's almost at a point where I don't care what the government knows and what they're hiding. I've got an embarrassment of riches here with the number of UFO cases coming into our local chapter. You know, I don't need them to try to hide anything, because it's all, you know, just flowing freely now. People are talking about what's happening to them openly.
While alien abductions did not achieve widespread attention until the 1960s, there were many similar stories circulating decades earlier. These early abduction-like accounts have been dubbed paleo abductions by UFO researcher Jerome Clark. In an 1897 edition of the Stockton, California Daily Mail, Colonel H.G. Shaw claimed he and a friend were harassed by 3 tall, slender humanoids whose bodies were covered with a fine, downy hair. Colonel Shaw reported that these beings tried to kidnap the pair. The 1955 publication of Harold T. Wilkins' Flying Saucers Uncensored declared that Carl Honrath and Wilbur Wilkinson, who had claimed they were contacted by aliens, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Wilkins reported his speculation that the duo was the victims of alleged abduction by flying saucers. A wave of contactee cases emerged in the 1950s as well. These individuals claimed to have been contacted by aliens. However, the substance of contactee narratives is often regarded as quite different from alien abduction accounts. Widespread publicity was generated by the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case of 1961. The Hill incident was probably the prototypical abduction case, and was perhaps the first in which the claimant described beings that later became widely known as the Greys, and in which the beings were said to explicitly identify as extraterrestrial origin. Proving alien abductions is difficult without obvious physical evidence. When an experiencer is returned, all he has to prove his encounter are the fragments of memories left intact by the aliens. Though throughout the history of UFO studies, countless cases have occurred that do indeed present physical evidence, many are not aware of this, or the facts of a case are simply ignored. Details in each case often are the proof an encounter happened, but even with specific details, we're left with the account and the sincerity of the witness. California podiatrist Dr. Roger Lear claims to have removed alien implants from patients. implants is a term used in ufology to describe a physical object placed in someone's body after they have been abducted by aliens. Claimed abilities of the implants range from telepresence, mind control, and biotelemetry, the way we tag wild animals for study. As with UFO subjects in general, the idea of alien implants has seen very little attention from mainstream scientists.
We found in several cases that they put out an electromagnetic field measurable on a Gauss meter of about 6 milligauss. And if anybody's into electronics or radio, you'll know that's a pretty strong magnetic field. When they're taken out of the body, they don't do anything. Also on an instrument called a trimeter, we got a mid-range reading on a combined scale, electrical scale, and magnetic scale, and that's also a pretty strong reading. We have an electrical engineer that we've used, and he has designed a special probe that's connected with an oscilloscope so we can read the wave and see what it looks like, and he says there's a good indication that there's something going in and there's something coming out. So obviously these objects are in communication with somebody at some distance.
Since the 1940s, there have been countless sightings and even physical encounters with the extraterrestrials by ordinary citizens. Thousands of videos and photos have been taken, the best of which have been confiscated by the government and never released to the public. See, the last thing the government wants is public disclosure about the alien presence, because they fear the sociological repercussions that would follow. And if the people knew that an advanced race superseded our government, it would lead to social upheaval. I mean, why answer to a government that really wasn't in charge? The consequences of the truth could lead to social disorder. That's why there's been a decades-long effort to suppress the truth.
Sightings have been caught on camera in Chile, Bolivia, and Brazil, and it's fair to say a lot of people are losing their minds over them. The latest of these sightings was filmed in the Chilean capital of Santiago, with 4 glowing orbs seen hovering above skyscrapers in the city. It has been viewed over 100,000 times and has split the online community on whether it's actually genuine. Commentators on YouTube were quick to give their opinion, with many believing that an alien invasion is in the cards, while others simply thought it was either military planes or helicopters. Neither seems entirely convincing. This came after more eerie footage emerged earlier in the month in a rural neighborhood in Bolivia, where a giant flying saucer was captured on film above mountains in El Alto, a city in the northwest Bolivian region of La Paz. The clip shows an unusually shaped object flying through the sky before disappearing and then reappearing in the clouds. It was uploaded to a UFO spotting website dedicated to gathering evidence of alien sightings and has now been shared worldwide. Cynics believe that the footage is a hoax to increase online traffic for the filmmaker's website and has simply been created by using a digital editing program. Believers were given yet another chance of hope in southern Brazil too, with a very similar looking UFO appearing in their skies. The Express reported that a woman named Marmel posted the picture online showing another blurred dish shape in the sky, which she didn't even notice while taking the scenic photo. Could this be evidence that the Kachinas are returning? South America has some of the most amazing UFO encounters on record. Especially remarkable is the sheer variety of the sightings, which range from straightforward accounts of flying objects to abductions, landings, cattle mutilation, as well as contactee accounts and strange beings that emerge from oddly shaped craft. In addition, there are particularities to these sightings that are uniquely South American twists to the tales that are to be found on no other continent. Undoubtedly, the best known of the South American encounters occurred in 1957. A Brazilian farmer by the name of Villas Boas was working in his fields with a tractor when he claims he was abducted by aliens and taken aboard a spacecraft. There he claims to have had intercourse with a beautiful fair-skinned girl with high cheekbones, a very pointed chin, and vivid blue Chinese-type slant eyes, who stood about 4 feet 8 inches high without her helmet. The case was thoroughly investigated, and researchers admitted feeling impressed at the clarity of Boa's evidence. In the ensuing months and years, the details were checked and rechecked by dozens of separate people without revealing any contradiction in the nature of the farmer's story. As such, it merits its notoriety as one of the most riveting abduction accounts on record. In August 1962, for example, there was an incident that made even the Boas case look tame. Unfortunately, on this occasion, the victim did not survive to tell the tale. Briefly, the facts are these. On the 19th of that month, 2 glowing red spheres the size of footballs are reported to have flown over the hut of a poor diamond prospector named Revelino Marfa de Silva. Later, 2 aliens, approximately 1.5 feet in height, entered the hut and peered at the family as they lay in bed. The next day, one of the man's sons was surprised to discover 2 strange balls outside the hut. One was entirely black, and the other black and white. When the father came out to look at them, they apparently rose up at him and enveloped him in a cloud of yellow smoke. He was never seen again. Shortly afterwards, the son was reported to have been taken into custody by the Brazilian army, some say as a means of silencing him. Another astonishing encounter occurred in 1973 near the town of Catanduva, Brazil. The 70s were to prove the heyday of South American encounters, and this is perhaps one of the most sensational. A traveling salesman returning home in a torrential downpour suddenly found his car radio cut out on him, followed shortly afterwards by the engine of the car. Almost immediately, a blinding beam of blue light then shone down from above, and overwhelmed by a great sense of heat, the driver panicked and fled from the car. The salesman was later to testify that his vehicle became transparent, and his skin began to burn as he lapsed into unconsciousness. Hours later, he was discovered spread-eagled in the road by people in a passing car who called the police. Taken to a hospital, he was quickly discharged, but later strange blotches developed on his abdomen. The examining doctor's opinion was that they were caused by strange rays. The amazing corollary to this story is that a year later, the same man disappeared for 6 days before being found over 500 miles away, sitting on a hill completely soaked. He later claimed to have been abducted by aliens and medically examined aboard a UFO. Then, as before, doctors were impressed by his lucidity and were happy to pronounce him fully compos mentis. In 1965, around 50 Indians of the Tabu tribe were astonished to see 3 tall beings emerge from 2 saucer-like craft that came down close to the Argentinian town of Formosa, near the border with Paraguay. The beings appeared to have luminous halos around their bodies, and the Indians knelt down and worshipped them. Witnesses speak of verbal contact being established with the aliens, who informed the Indians that the space people would eventually come in greater numbers. An Indian who made a close approach to the craft was warned off, and eventually the beings returned to the craft, which took off in a dazzling burst of light. Police who hurried to the scene are believed to have taken numerous photographs, which are reputed to show at least 3 landed saucers and 5 aliens. Beings that emerged from an egg-shaped craft assured a local hunter that before long, the whole world would come to know them. The hunter, named Philip Martinez, claims to have met the aliens on no fewer than 3 occasions. The first time in 1949, he ran toward a hovering object revolving above the trees, only to be paralyzed by a mysterious burst of energy. From a door in the object, a small being then descended down a ladder. Standing no more than a meter in height, the being was described as wearing a helmet and clothes like a diver's costume. In an interview, Martinez claims to have been taken aboard one of the alien vessels, which oddly was piloted by a crew of 4 beings around a meter in height, and another blonde-haired being just over 6 feet tall. He claims to have been placed in a spacesuit, but this had an alarming effect on his heart rate, and the suit was quickly removed. Conversation with the aliens was slow and difficult, but according to Martinez, the aliens' name for their craft was Seal. In 1963, in Parana State, Brazil, a crowd of onlookers was amazed to see a bright zinc-colored object descend into flames of a major forest fire. Even more astonishing was that after a quarter of an hour, several tall beings were seen to emerge from the craft and strode around in the flames completely untouched by the furnace-like heat that surrounded them. Even more perplexing was the fact that the beings seemed intent on collecting charred rocks and other material from the fire, which they then took back to the waiting spaceship. This done, the craft then departed as silently as it came. Witnesses described it as a basin-shaped craft, 35 meters in diameter and around 8 meters in height. This occasion, 2 young hunters came across a luminous machine around 10 feet wide, hovering just 2 feet from the ground. 4 or 5 beings were seen to emerge from the craft and then attempted to drag both youths inside. Fighting them off as best they could, one of the young men lashed out with his rifle butt, bringing it down on the head of one of the aliens. Incredibly, the weapon broke into fragments as if it had struck on a rock. Finally managing to break free of the aliens, both youths ran off to summon police, who later reported signs of a struggle. As in the previous incident, both youths required hospital treatment and remained in a highly agitated state for some time afterwards. In Argentina, the year 1965 brought a series of abortive abduction attempts where aliens attempted to take people by force. The national press published numerous reports of these incidents, which bear evidence of a widespread trend of which relatively few cases were adequately investigated. Of those that were, an incident in the province of Corrientes tells of 5 luminous craft observed flying low overhead. One vessel proceeded to land near a farmhouse, and 5 beings around 2 meters tall were then seen to emerge. On their heads were instruments giving off flashes of light. The focus of the beings' attention was immediately directed at the farmhouse. Forcing their way inside, they attempted to overpower the owner and drag him away. Fighting the aliens as best he could, the farmer eventually broke free of his attackers, who fled when other villagers rushed to his assistance. Several days later, the aliens returned and attempted to abduct another man. Once again, villagers turned out in force, firing rifles which, although not able to injure the aliens, was sufficient to drive them away again. The association of Latin America with sky visitors who arrive from the stars goes back thousands of years. To native Indian cultures, these beings brought with them the rudiments of civilization, initiating major developments in science, agriculture, astronomy, and masonry. By the shores of Lake Titicaca, the ancient ruins of Teotihuacan bear a mysterious reflection of those ancient beliefs. Here the imposing Gate of the Sun contains enigmatic hieroglyphs that some have interpreted as advanced astronomical data. The best-selling author Eric von Däniken found the place highly indicative of alien influence. He wrote, "What does legend say about the mysterious city of Tiahuanaco? It tells of a golden ship that came from the stars," he continues. What titanic forces were at work here, and to what end? Von Däniken concludes, what secret does this city conceal? What message from other worlds awaits its solution on the Bolivian plateau? Equally evocative of mysterious influence are the Nazca lines etched in the Peruvian desert close to the town of Ica. Here, dead straight lines traverse the desert for dozens of miles. Other shapes include depictions of monkeys, whales, and decorative birds. At ground level, the patterns are barely perceptible and only really become apparent when viewed from the air. Since the antiquity of the lines goes back thousands of years, the question has been asked and re-asked. Why would an ancient people go to such immense effort to construct a line system only visible from the air? Who was meant to see it? Inevitably, von Däniken saw the answer in terms of aliens. He interpreted the lines as markers or landing strips for alien spacecraft. While this may appear a far-fetched explanation, the Indians of that area have other ideas. Their traditions frequently make mention of strange visitors who descend from the sky aboard fiery craft, visitations which they insist have carried on down to present day. There has always been a connection between Native Americans and beings from other parts of the universe, referred to as star people or visitors from space. In Utah's 9 Mile Canyon lies the heaviest concentration of rock art in the world. These depict beings that appear to be not quite completely human. They can be seen next to a disc-shaped object. Other beings of a more human form are raising their hands to these beings near the object. Near Christina Lake, British Columbia, Canada, there is a picture of a white disc with black wings hovering over 4 human figures on their knees. There are lines coming from the top of the disc which could be rays of light. Longer, more irregular lines come down from the bottom of the object. A rock painting at Cayusa Creek, Idaho, depicts what appears to be a cone-shaped rocket with smoke or flames trailing behind it. In the cone is a humanoid figure, apparently holding on to the inner walls. A pictograph near Kootenay Lake in British Columbia also shows an enclosed vehicle holding a single humanoid figure. It depicts what appear to be sections of the vehicle and 2 objects closely resembling retractable legs for landing. Numerous depictions of egg-shaped objects with wavy lines emanating from them have been found. These could be an effort to show the object in motion or some sort of light or heat. If this were to depict the sun, lines would typically be found all around the circumference of the circle. In these cases, they came only from the bottom side. In certain Cherokee legends, it's said that their people originated in the Pleiades long ago. They claim to have come to this world as star seeds to bring light and knowledge. If the stories are true, then modern-day Cherokee, as well as other Native Americans, and many of us with Native American blood, contain Pleiadian genes.
The one government agency that contains the most extensive knowledge and evidence of the alien presence is NASA. The amount of data collected by them since the 1960s is absolutely staggering, and many people have been killed in the name of protecting the secrecy. But in the ensuing years, very credible testimonies have surfaced by NASA whistleblowers, including some of the astronauts themselves. The one revelation in particular that NASA has intensely guarded from the public are the bases on the dark side of the moon. Immense, domed bases that have been there by their estimate for thousands of years. And I know they're there because I have the privilege of seeing the images with my own eyes, and it's really frightening stuff.
A former NASA astronaut, Dr. Brian O'Leary, stated that there is abundant evidence that we are being contacted, that civilizations have been visiting us for a very long time, that their appearance is bizarre from any type of traditional, materialistic, Western point of view, that these visitors use the technologies of consciousness. They use toroids. They use co-rotating magnetic disks for their propulsion systems. That seems to be the common denominator of the UFO phenomenon. Prime Ministers, Chief Cabinet Secretaries, and NASA astronauts all testify to the truth that thousands of ordinary people across the globe know